Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Sunday talk within the Nine-Sided Circle. I'm one of your two hosts, Nor Kyle.
And I'm the other one of your two hosts who is not your Kyle. I'm Mushtaq Ali.
Yeah. All right. So we want to thank you for joining us once again. If you're who hangs out with us on a fairly regular basis, and if you're new, welcome. We're happy to have you too. And we do need to do a little bit of a YouTube spiel before we get into our topic this evening.
And we have great news for you for our YouTube spiel.
Oh, yay.
Yeah, for this month and this month only, you can subscribe to our channel for free. Yeah. So take advantage. Go down and click that subscribe button. Hit the like button. That way we know that you actually like us. And we'll be like Marilyn. They like, no, that was Sally Fields.
Sally Fields, yes.
Yeah. And leave a comment. We aren't getting enough comments.
Comment is free,
Yeah.
as the saying goes. So feel free, and we will engage with you and like our video or hate it, whichever one feels true for you. We appreciate all feedback. Anything else?
If you like our video, you will receive a blessing.
There you go.
Yeah.
And there are two ways to support us if you'd like to, aside from, subscribing to our channel and all that stuff. We have our PayPal link below for donations, and we also have our Ko-fi account, which we have set up, and you can check out that below as well.
You can buy us a cup of coffee. You can buy us a cup of coffee every month. There are all sorts of things you can do.
Yeah, so that's available to you if you appreciate our work and have benefited from it. Mean a lot to us. And lastly, oh my gosh, I just spaced out.
Lastly, she just spaced out.
What was it? I don't know. Maybe it'll come back to
We'll
me.
come back. We haven't got really anything going on.
Yeah. All right. So that's the most important stuff. Thank you for putting up with us for the spiel. All right, let's get to our topic, shall we?
All right. What is our topic?
So this topic came up in conversation with a friend of mine this week. Some stuff about choice. How much choice is available to us, really? And so that inspired our talk this evening. And that's what we'll be delving into. We've touched on this a few times. If you've seen my video on Why Don't They Leave? That's the title of it, where I discussed the invisibility of choice in difficult situations. We're going to be talking about the illusion of choice itself this evening.
Yeah, but that talk will be at the end of this video.
Yeah.
There will be a link to it.
Yes.
So you have to watch all the way through the video to find the link. Or you'll never find the talk. We hit it.
I would love it if you guys would check that out, because that was the talk I did on my own a few months back, and it was meaningful to me.
That's when I was off staffing people, right?
It was. Yeah. He was at a martial arts workshop at the time.
Fencing.
So I'll let you get started, because I feel like
you're so good to me.
The flavor of this talk is this time I feel like it's coming a bit more from your perspective, and I certainly have things to share too.
Yeah. So my contention is that for most people, most of the time, choice is an illusion. You don't really have a whole lot of choice, because to have choice, you must be awake. And to have choice, you can't just have an either or. This is something that people don't understand. In order to make a true choice, there has to be at least three things. Yeah, it can be, I want a sandwich. I don't want a sandwich. That's either or, right? But there also needs to be, I want a bowl of soup.
It's that third choice.
That third choice. Yeah, the binary choice is mechanical. It is not real choice. We live in a world where everything seems to operate to limit our choices. Society operates to limit our choices. The government operates to limit our choices, right? I mean, some of this is a good thing because I don't want to be in a world where people choose to spin donuts in the middle of the street. I've been in that world and it's not all that much fun.
Are you guys familiar with what donuts are? That's when someone's like squealing their tires as they turn recklessly in a circle. And it can be like a
Yeah, it's usually done
stunt.
it's done as a stunt in an intersection. Yeah. It's very popular in parts of California.
Right, yeah. And you can be a professional and do it, but when it's happening in your neighborhood, it's quite dangerous. So
Yeah. So you got that.
yeah,
Um,
choices. That's a choice.
Yeah.
Glad that that is not a standard choice.
Yeah. For some people, there's no choice at all.
Mhm.
Yeah. But so here's the thing. If you are living from your conditioned self, then what appears to be choice is basically mechanical. We hate hearing this. People will kill you if you tell them this. It can create violent reactions. So be careful discussing this topic with other people because you never know what's going to set somebody off.
Because it touches lightly or not so lightly on the free will versus, everybody being a robot.
A sleeping person has no free will because a sleeping person has no consciousness. And free will is required for choice. So how do you deal with this? First of all, you have to admit that there's a problem. So like 12 steps, right? The first step is I admit that I am an unconscious robot and I am helpless. But there is a higher power who is also me. And I can get help from that to wake up. And here's the thing, only the awakened consciousness can make choices. Can each of all of you think of a time when you experienced the illusion of choice? When you just found yourself making a mechanical choice?
Do you have an example that might inspire people?
Yes.
Off the top of your head?
Watch any TV commercial. You can buy brand X soap, or you can buy wonderful sparkly soap. Brand X, sparkly, brand X. I'm hamming it up a little bit, but the way I'm presenting this tells you what? Sparkly good, brand X bad, right? Everything from holding it up, looking up, to looking down at brand X, designed to engender certain feelings. This happens to you hundreds of times a day, not just on the television, but walking down the street, reading a magazine. For those of you who hang out on the internet, hanging out on the internet.
I was gonna say Tinder, like you have a selection and it's like everyone else outside of that is invisible to you.
I wouldn't know.
I wouldn't know either, but this is my understanding.
Yeah.
James, I did see you unmuted.
Well, I will say that I've gone through an entire day just bumbling on automatic. I want this, I want that, but it's not really I wanting anything. It's just me responding.
Yeah.
To what will give you maximum comfort or distraction. Da, 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 da. I've also had those moments where I've gone to do something stupid, something mechanical, and there's a little voice in the back of my head saying, don't do this, you know where this will lead, but I still go through with the stupid mechanical and
Yeah.
reap the whirlwind as a result.
But at least you've gotten to the part where you know that it's stupid.
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose that is
So
something.
that gets us to, how do you deal with this? And once you realize that your life is mechanical, that you are working as a stimulus response meat machine, what do you do? And the answer is, you have to wake up. You cannot have choice while asleep. Think about that. Here you are, you're in bed, you've nodded off. Are you making any choices? No. Your brain is reacting to different things, but there's no choice going on. If you wake up, you can make a choice, like, oh, I should get up and go to the bathroom, but it's too damn cold, so I'm going to stay in bed and suffer. Things like that. Yes,
I
Jay.
feel like I want to sleep. Like every time I follow an automatic pattern, it feels like I'm choosing to do that instead of being awake to what's real. Or sleep is seductive.
It is.
Yes.
Something like that.
Yeah,
It seems to be motivated.
it's got a stickiness to it.
Part
An
of
inertia.
part of what's going on there is it's an actual addiction. There's brain chemistry involved in this. When you get an idea and you follow through on that idea, a mechanical idea, you get a dopamine hit. When I was young, I smoked cigarettes. And then I got smart and decided I was going to quit. And this taught me about my mechanical nature like nothing else could. Because it was like, okay, I'm going to quit smoking. An hour later, I get a thought. I could have one cigarette. I can taper off. No. But then that thought would come back and it would come back and it would become more and more urgent as my brain chemistry changed, as the dopamine hits that I got for feeding my addiction started waning. And the impulse to smoke would become stronger and stronger and stronger, to the point initially where it was almost overwhelming. And then you find yourself lighting a cigarette without even thinking about it. Find yourself smoking and you're going, oh, I meant to quit. Oh, I guess I'll do it tomorrow. And then it's, you do not pass through the shock point.
As
Blow
they
off,
say.
yeah, literally, you blow off all of that energy that you've been putting into transforming yourself. And it's a waste, and it's harder the next time because it becomes easier to rationalize doing the thing that your programming wants you to do. It's the same with food, right? Go on not even a diet that restricts your calories, just a diet that restricts what you eat. And you will discover quickly the foods that you're actually addicted to.
I think that reminds me. We do a virtual retreat this year. I believe it's going to take place in September, roughly. And that is an opportunity to
To
experience
discover
what
this
he's
for
talking
real,
about. Yeah. And more information will be coming out on that before long, but it does involve the opportunity, not the mandatory requirement, to alter how you eat for a month roughly.
Yeah.
And you find that there are things that you miss, things that you crave, habits that when you can't satisfy a craving come out that may surprise you. And it's very educational.
So this is an outline of the problem. How do we attack this problem? And the answer is usually one habit at a time. First step, wake yourself up. Train yourself to the awake state. We all know how to do that, right? Everybody here knows how to do that. Ask yourself right now, am I awake or am I asleep? Check in and see which is true. Oh, look, you're awake. Every single one of you wakes up when you ask yourself that question. It's the easiest thing in the world. Just ask, remember to ask. Remembering to ask is the tricky part. And then see how long you can hold that awake state. For most people in the beginning, it's a few seconds and then your mind wanders off. But then you come back, you do it again. After you've done that, you start adding some breathing. Do the fundamental breath. Or just breathe, just be aware of breathing. Breathe consciously, awareness on breath. And so here we are, we're awake and we're breathing. Now think of that thing that you would really like to eat, that you crave to eat, that could be sitting right in front of you right now, and notice how you're drawn to it, but remain awake and continue breathing. Keep your awareness on your breath. Keep your awareness in the awake state. As long as you can do this, that habit cannot totally hook you. It can only hook you when you go to sleep. So you don't even worry about the thing that you would really like to eat. A big, fresh, hot cherry pie. Just made from scratch right out of the oven, and it's wafting up your nose. Yeah. You
Is that
you will,
yours right now?
that's
Yeah.
definitely one of mine. That will make me salivate if I think about it too much. And instead of that, I ask myself, am I awake? And I get with my breathing. And the way that I get with my breathing is the first thing that I do is I exhale, long exhale. Slow. I'm going to feel the exhale. I pause at the end of the exhale. I relax to let the air come in, and at the top of the inhale, long exhale again. And my exhale is longer than my inhale. Pause at the end and relax. I keep my awareness on my breath. I breathe consciously, and I keep my being awake. That's all there is to it, really. Simple. Not easy, but simple. That is the first step to dealing with the compulsion of habit. There's a lot more to it than that over time, but this is the first step. So, first of all, admit you have a problem. And your problem is that you're somnambulistic. You spend a whole lot of time in waking unconsciousness. Decide that you would like to change that. Ask yourself, am I awake or am I asleep? Then breathe consciously and watch what comes up to distract you. Watch for what comes up to distract you, because that's going to be part of your habit patterns. It's not like you're going to have to hunt for habits. It's not like you're going to have to hunt for your conditioning. Your conditioning is everywhere. this make sense? Questions so far?
Frank, I see you unmuted. Yeah.
Yes, I have a question about, I don't know, trying to neutralize that force. Let's say that you're engaged with thoughts of fear, and you and and if I go too deep in that thought, if I continue with that train of thought, there's becomes a point when it's for lack of better terms, it's just too sticky to get it out of my consciousness. It's there. And so then it becomes a battle, and which requires an awful lot more. I've noticed that there are times when I sense what's coming up, and I've heard you use the term, the flavor of the thought. So I'll use that if I can. I've see that sometimes I'm able to sense the flavor of the thought. And I'm wondering how deep can you go? I mean, isn't it part of becoming conscious and aware that you have these feelings, and you learn to deal with them? So you have to not be afraid to approach them. But if you approach them too fast, they're, as I said, very sticky. And
oh yeah, and they can happen quick and be incredibly triggering. And that's like a special case of working on this. And when I say they can be incredibly triggering, I mean so fast, you don't even know how fast. For example, I'm sitting with my brother on a log. We're in the Angeles National Forest, minding our own business, shooting the shit. And a helicopter comes over. He back rolls off the log, and he's belly crawling into the brush. So I go after him and I go, "Hey, what are you doing?" And he stops and goes, "I don't know." It's that fast sometimes. And that kind of mechanical nature is the hardest to deal with, because it's hooked right into your survival.
Yeah.
And it was no longer useful for him, but it took a little while to rewire it.
There was a time when that had to.
Yeah,
be there.
he had to do that.
Yeah.
Doing that kept him alive. So it becomes a really, really strong habit.
I mean, this is one of those things where it's kind of like you need to reteach your body that this is not necessary. Yeah.
So the thing is, don't go deep. If you feel a feeling come up, stay awake, stay in your breath, and just observe the feeling as if it were just there. You know, don't invite it in, don't chase it away, don't try and deal with it. The feeling is just there.
Yeah.
And you breathe, and you stay awake, and you watch it. And if you do that for a little while, the energy of the feeling dissipates most times.
I've noticed that, I really don't know how to say this other than to just say that if I sneak up on my awareness of it, like if I disassociate myself from the thought, and then I bring it back into my awareness slowly, but just sampling, but always ready to back away. That's been something that I've been trying to do. I don't know that it's helpful or not. It appears to be. I can go deeper than I have.
Consider the idea that you are not required to refeel these things. You need to shift it from feeling to seeing. See the thought, don't feel the thought. And if you do that, it is much harder for the thought to take you over, because you are not caught in the feeling of it. So when you find yourself focusing in and starting to feel the thought, make a picture of it and put the picture out here. And yes, you are
Farther out.
Yeah, you are
Away.
dissociating a little bit, but you're not denying. And that's what you want. You don't want to deny. You don't want to repress. but you don't have to feel the feelings again. Feeling the feelings again reinforces the feelings. And this is the nature of our mechanicalness. What we reinforce persists.
Mhm. Yeah, my understanding of it was that if I try to suppress it, that eventually that suppressed energy is going to want to come out.
Yeah, that's
So-
one of the few things Freud was right about. What you repress returns. So you don't repress it, but you don't have to give it energy either. There's that beautiful balance where it's there, but you're not feeding it. And that's what you're looking for.
Really hard to peel subjectivity out of certain parts of your life, you know.
Oh, hell yeah. Especially the parts that involve you not getting dead. That's, I mean, there is not much that imprints you more than that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's going to take a minute.
Mhm. Okay, well, thank you very much.
Yeah. Anybody else have some thoughts? I had a thought once. It didn't hurt.
Well, I wanted to ask you about, so you mentioned that to have a choice, you need to have at least three things.
Yes.
Mhm.
So is these three related to the three forces or?
Yes. Everything's related to the three forces.
No escaping that.
No, you can't get away from it. Everything is in threes.
Sorry, not sorry.
Yeah. So yes, it's related to the three forces. That's the easy way to understand why you need three.
Okay.
One, you're just a slave. You have no choice, right? Two, you're a mechanism. You have on and off. Three begins to give you more options. You can step away from the binary. Six is even better. If you have six choices, you are the master of your universe.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and also I wanted to ask you, sometimes it happened to me that, I mean, I wasn't in a awake state, these I'm sure. And I had to choose among different things, might have been two, might have been even more than two. And I was, so what happens to me often when I have to choose is that, especially something that I think is important, and I'm not in an awake state, I become paralyzed.
Mhm.
So there are tons of things, inside me, tons of reality inside me that each of them pushes for a different possible option. And it's a very strong battle of, pros and cons. And at the end, I can spend one day, 1 week, 1 month, and I'm just exhausted without being able to make a real choice, So I'm just feeling that if I'm consuming my own energy for nothing, like
Yeah, and that's a perfect description of what actually happens. Yeah, that's pretty real. And this is why the third choice is handy. If you find yourself in a binary, this or that, and there's nothing else you can do, find the third thing. It can be anything. I could buy a dog. I could not buy a dog. And I don't know which to do, buy a dog, not buy a dog. I know, I'll have a donut. Third choice breaks you out of that pattern.
Mhm.
And work on the breath and the being awake. I'm going to keep coming. I mean, we have worn that into the ground, and there's a reason for that.
I understand.
Yeah, as one of the great masters of our lineage said, our methodology is founded in breath. Breath is everything. The first of the principles that we teach is Hoshtardam, breathe consciously, awareness of breath. Without that, you got nothing.
Thank you.
Yeah. Cherie, talk to us.
Hello there. I just had a funny little thought in my head about you're scared of caterpillars. And the caterpillars you shock, and then you leave it alone, but you can watch it transform. And the transformation from the caterpillar into the butterfly then is that transcendence when it flies away. And I find that with problems, you know, you can get whacked by a problem and you think, okay, so how else can I deal with it? And then you watch it unfold and change into something that often you don't need to meddle with it. It will do it. And then it's not as bad as it seems. And it is something that can be quite beautiful. So I've been thinking about how I've been dealing with strangers, because a long time ago I got assaulted and it really just put me into hermit mode. And then I thought, no, I don't like being a hermit. And then how am I going to change that? And then this morning I was at the shopping center and I'm looking at all of these people not looking at each other. No one looks anyone in the eye. And so I was walking along and there was these senior people having coffee. And one man by himself looked up at me and I smiled at him. And I just said, good morning. And he went, good morning. And he saluted me. I went, oh, what a shock. There was one person awake in the whole shopping center. And I thought, how nice is that? You know, you can actually seek out, just look around and be part of that transformation. You know, when you feel like everybody's asleep and you're working on your own awakeness, how can you do that? And then I bumped into an old neighbor and she said, I never noticed anybody. No one. She said, if you had walked right past me and not said a word, I would not have recognized you. And I used to see this lady every day. And I thought, wow. So that's, you know, just everyday life. There's little opportunities that using your awakeness and then touching someone in that connection sort of way. And I thought that was a useful thing to mention.
Oh yeah, there is one of our exercises, which is notice everything.
Yeah, that's another one you can link to.
Yeah, you walk down the street, notice every single thing that you can. Every sound, every sight, every smell, even the taste. You know, can you taste where the water is? If you're near a creek, right? You can feel that on your tongue if you know what you're doing. Yeah, notice everything. It will change your entire world.
And as for Frank's comment about fear, your comment to me a long time ago about the suffering feels real. Can you add that to Frank's experience of fear?
Oh yeah.
Feels real, but not real.
Well, it feels real, but unless there's an actual stimulus, it's not real. If there's somebody crawling in through his window, it's real. If there's nobody crawling in through his window, it's not real.
In the case of your brother, there was a real helicopter.
There was a real helicopter, but it was still the wrong choice because that helicopter didn't have any machine guns on it, as far as we could tell.
Well, it was out of context. That's right.
Well, it's the Angeles Mountains. There's always planes and helicopters.
Yeah. Well, what I mean is like
it just caught him at a moment when his attention was not fully on the now. And he got, sucked into that so fast. I literally, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a flip like that as he just rolled right off that log and started crawling away. And you think belly crawling is hard and it's slow. It's not. Yeah, that's it. I forget who said, the first time somebody shot at me, I discovered that I could sprint on my belly. So,
I certainly understand what you're saying. And, I noticed that for me personally, whenever I'm drifting in thought and I haven't prompted my thoughts, put an action in like what the 9-sided circle has offered me, then in that drifting mode, my attention can be taken away, or I'll be in a certain state of mind. And that's when I'm pretty susceptible to distractions that I don't like.
Yeah.
I understand that. I relate to that. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Thank you to both of you, Frank and Sheree.
Yeah. Levita, are you still with us? What do you think? You're smart. You know things.
Oh, there's a lot of thoughts swirling in my head about all of this. But I find that when I start thinking about it, I fall asleep, literally, like unconscious.
Yeah.
And I can tell that it's a resistance thing, because there are times when, you know, you're trying to do something and you literally are tired. And when you try to do it, you fall asleep because you're tired. And then the difference is, okay, I'm sitting here listening to this and I don't really feel resistance. I just find myself going, because the machine does not want me to wake
Yeah.
up.
Either that or we're really boring, which is equally possible.
No, because you can, because here's the thing. You know the difference between I'm listening to a lecture, oh my gosh, and being physically, I haven't had any sleep in 2 days and I have to go to this lecture, and you fall asleep. You know the difference between those things. This is completely different. Like, you sat down, you had lots of energy, you had your cup of coffee, you're ready to go, and 20 minutes in, you find yourself trying to stay awake. So I'm like, that's where all of that resistance is coming from.
You know what you can do for that? This is how I have run into that. And what I did was set my phone to vibrate alarm every 3 minutes.
Wow.
And so I would listen, and when I started nodding off, I go, "Nyeh," and oh, I just nodded off. Wake up. Yeah, and it wasn't actually a phone. It was a timer, because this was before there were phones with timers on them and stuff.
Fancy phones.
Fancy phones.
Yeah.
Back when the only thing you could do with a phone was dial a friend or an enemy or the operator.
And nobody knew who you were until they picked up the phone. Adventures.
Yeah.
Yep.
But that is a really, I think, useful observation, Levita. And I think we're all going to find those places where very similar things happen when we come up against those spots, those subjects, those feelings, whatever it might be, that we're like, makes me exhausted just thinking about dealing with that. So it's almost like an unconscious checking out.
Yeah. And it can be frustrating when you're trying to learn about the subject, but you can't really stay awake long enough to get through
Yeah.
the video or the audio or the book, you know.
Yep.
Lavita, when I discovered my 9 typeness was to fall asleep at every important point of whatever it is I was learning. Just knowing that I'm falling asleep because this is really important, that actually poked me awake every time. This is important every time, because that was my style. I'd start distracting myself because I wasn't paying attention. So that was the end of the deal, was that this is important. This is important. This is important.
And the tricky bit is that sometimes you're not even aware you're doing it, in the sense of, oh, I must have been really tired. And you're not, like, mechanical, you know? And then later on during a conversation like this, it's like, That's what that was.
You start doing it enough, you recognize it's a temptation to slide into mechanicalness versus just being mechanical. And you realize if you're in this path of waking up, those little things happen, and you have to have a little phrase to tell yourself, remind yourself, what are you doing? What are you doing? It's like you're unconscious. You're being the one that's actually got the stick and giving you a poke, instead of someone else telling you were asleep, or you're this or you're that. You actually wake up and say, okay, I can feel myself sliding, I'm fading away, I'm going. So you have to find little tricks, even if it means that you have to stand up the whole time you're reading a boring book or something. But you have to remind yourself the power and the importance of that particular teaching or whatever it is that you're trying to grasp. And sometimes you have to put it down. So this reminds me, I'm teaching somebody how to do a crunch, a hollow body hold, where you're doing a full body contraction and you got to pull everything into your tummy, squeeze your glutes, legs together, point your toes, press your tongue into your palate and everything, and curl up and reach down to your knees, and you're lying on the floor. And people are already starting to check out at 3 seconds, 5 seconds, 10 seconds. And I said, we're doing this for 30 seconds. And I make them do it for 30 seconds because I want them to feel how many times they check out. And then I go, that's too hard. So how about we break it up like this? We do 10 seconds, 5 seconds rest, 10 seconds, 5 seconds rest, 10 seconds, 5 seconds rest. That's 30 seconds, closer to 100% than doing a whole 30 seconds in a big chunk and getting diminishing returns. So by just actually making it a little bit easier for yourself, I think that's also part of our learning to wake up. We can't hold the awakeness for an hour. So we have to eat that elephant a bite at a time.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that sometimes I have the opposite problem. Like, I'm awake, and I think I mentioned this to Moosh Talk 2 weeks ago. I think my worst character flaw is I actually answer questions. So if you ask me, why did you do that? You better have a chair and a sandwich, because we're gonna be here for a minute. And sometimes it feels like I'm too awake, because when I talk to people, what have you been up to? What's going on? And then I start telling them, they're like, really, I really don't want to listen to 10 minutes of how you were listening to the trees and the wind going through the trees, and then you heard animals. Never mind. You were doing well. Okay, goodbye. So I've had to learn to not share, because I think it distresses people.
Or
I
pick
don't
better
know why,
friends.
but it does. What'd you say?
I said, or pick better friends.
Well, there is that.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, there is that.
Because personally, I enjoy it when I ask somebody what's going on and they actually tell me.
I do
Plus,
too.
yeah.
Yeah, because who wants? I mean, it's fine for surface level stuff from time to time, but sometimes you're talking to people that you have known for a long time, and you're like, oh, so what's been going on? Nothing. Is there anything that you're excited about? No. Anything interesting happen at work? No. If you won the big lottery, what would you do with the money? I don't know. And you're just like,
Yeah.
When I started listening to the Nine-Sided Circle, I had to have headsets on. I had to be doing something. Chaos ruled the day. And I started turning my thoughts off. And I've learned that silence is really a good place for me to be, no matter what. And it's clinging to that silence and I'm so grateful for being able to get there at times. If I complicate things by trying to figure all these things out, then I get myself frustrated. and I just surrendering and not really worrying about a lot of the things that I used to. Well, they, I don't know. It's just, I don't know. I guess I'm losing my train of thought on this. I guess, I don't know. So I guess thank you for letting me share that drivel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I think there's a point to be made here where part of being awake is not only sensing into what is up for us to share in that state, it's also about, what is going on outside of us, what is being expressed on the other person, and are we able to tune into that as well. And I think for those of us who tend not to share, it is a test of our awakeness to figure out how to share comfortably in certain circumstances. And if it is our tendency to share, to bubble over with things to share, that could be a sign of our being asleep. And perhaps in that case, we would need to learn how to be more reserved and more silent and more observant in a way that doesn't involve dialogue from us. But again, I think that could be true for the same person, not just different people, depending on the circumstances, depending on the scenario, and depending on where you're at personally.
Well, I guess in trying to practice self-observation and self-remembering as I'm learning it, I find it difficult to even want to come out of either of the two states. I mean, I really have to be brought out of it in order to accomplish things that I want to accomplish. I used to get lost in my whatever my projects were. I would get lost in them. I would start the project and then I would drift in thought, and there was no telling what mental neighborhood I was going to wind up in. But now I don't do that. Now I try to stay awake. And a way that I'm able to do that is by using my breath foremost. That was really an earth-shaking moment for me, to concentrate on my breath and to stay on it. I mean, certainly things knock on your door. You're going to get attracted by the squirrel running across the yard, but I'm not a dog. I can force myself to try to stay with the breath. And it got easier. And then before I knew it, I was realizing that I wasn't concentrating on my breath. It was like it was a complete flip for me.
Yeah.
And when that happened, all this energy, it's like I became more aware of that I wasn't aware of. And so that's where I'm at now. I'm just appreciating this. You'd say self-remembering. My gosh, I'm a being. I'm grateful for that. Being able to at least sense that I was lost in my head, as with most of the people that I associate with are. And when I try to share with them the possibilities that can be found in self-observation and self-remembering, if I'm doing it correctly, man, how you cannot explain that. There's no words that's going to give anybody what they really need to hear. If they need this, there's no words you're going to be able to tell them that's going to let them know just how freeing it can be. And so I know I said a lot there, and I apologize.
Yeah, I mean, this stuff takes a lot of growing work, and you have to step into that. You have to make that a priority. And I think that we'll find that takes work. And I liked what Cherie said about, having those cues to help us wake up. whether we're in silence or whether we're in communication, it's the same thing, really, when it comes down to it. And that means that the work never stops. So, Lavita, I think that it is definitely frustrating to be talking to people who we know are just checked out. And it can be discouraging, but that doesn't mean that we need to settle for that within ourselves. And that's why much of what we practice is kind of a secret practice, the solitude in the crowd thing, in that we're doing these things even if nobody else knows. And I've joked with my students, I say, nobody else cares if you're awake, meaning this is about you. This is about your work. And when you do the work, that has a positive influence on others. But you can't expect anyone to give you like praise and hurrahs and cheer you up and all that stuff. If they do that, wonderful. We have a community in which we try to do that for one another. But at the end of the day, it comes down to you and what you're doing, and not what anyone else thinks about it.
That's right.
Yeah.
I like that. Nobody cares if you're awake.
Yeah.
True.
I know it sounds harsh, but it is true. You have to care if you're awake.
Yeah. So Zainab, tell us things. You knew I was going to do that.
Yes. What should I say? I mean, the moment is always awake. So if not people around you are, they're not aware of it, but the moment is awake. So how I look at it is, if I'm awake, things will come and poke me to wake up. It could be the lady in the shopping center smiling at you, saying hi, or anything in the moment. So it's rewarding like this. It's of course it's easier if everyone around us is awake and you practice that. You don't fall asleep easier all the time, but what can we do? It's like we can't always be like together, everyone in the same boat. So does that make sense?
Yeah.
It does, yes. And I actually love this thought. As you said, the moment is awake. The moment will present opportunities and stimuli to us that are like, hey, pay attention to me. I'm here, right? And if we are sensitive to that, if we grow sensitive to that, then perhaps we have many more opportunities to wake up than we realize. You know, that we're being invited to be awake. And ultimately, to tie back to the subject matter of this evening, that means more openness to choice.
Yes. And remember, only the awake have choice. Sounds harsh, but it's true. And every single one of you has the possibility of being awake. Nobody here has failed yet.
Nope.
Nope.
Did you have more you wanted to share, Zainab? Well, thank you so much for sharing.
Maybe just it reminds me of the talk on the magnetic center and the process to do the grinding, the sorting, all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good analogy, actually.
And Lavita, I noticed that we didn't really get to make sure that you shared everything you wanted to share. Do you feel like you were able to express yourself fully, Lavita?
Yeah. That's pretty much it. Something bubbled up, but the bubble popped. So
Okay.
I'll probably remember it once we're off the call.
I mean, then you can comment on it or
Yeah.
post in the forum or on the video, whichever, or message
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Very
no, I'm fine.
Okay.
Good.
All right.
Thank you.
In that case,
Alessandro, do you have anything you might like to add? I think you got to unmute.
I need to unmute myself. No, I don't think so. I mean, I needed to work more on breath for sure,
Yeah.
but I will talk about this with.
Great. All right, everybody.
in that
How about
case,
you, Mushtaq? Are you good?
I'm totally good.
Okay.
And I'm going to
Brady
Brady
Bunch
Bunch
mode.
mode.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for hanging out with us once again. It's really good to see you all. And those of you who are watching on YouTube too, like, thank you for being here with us. So without further ado, we can wave to each other. Everybody watching on the replay, and we will see you next week. Bye.
Bye, folks.